The story begins with a boy named Ku Uno who curiously asks his grandmother Yo Uno if she will be coming with him as he heads out to the supermarket. With a gentle smile she responds that she knows where he is going. As they step outside, she inquires about what Kei would like to eat for their meal. He casually replies that anything will be fine. When she asks if he would like some vegetables, he responds with mild annoyance, saying anything but vegetables. On their way to the supermarket, it begins to rain and he holds the umbrella over both of them to keep them dry while shopping. She suggests grilling some salmon for dinner, however he reminds her that they had grilled salmon just the day before and then smiles as he proposes that they have some meat instead. During your time together, he reflects on his Ling situation, revealing that he resides with his grandmother. His mother has been absent for as long as he can remember, and his father, who passed away, left behind a ring as a memento. As a result, Yuma is the only family he has left. After they return home from the supermarket, she mentions that she is going to wash her hands, to which he casually replies that he will put the groceries away in the fridge. Suddenly, he is horrified to watch his grandmother collapse the floor. Panic-stricken, he rushes to her side and is shocked to witness a spiky, monstrous creature entering her body. Terrified and confused, he recoils, unsure of what he is seeing, and wonders if it is just a hallucination. Without hesitation, he calls for an ambulance, when the doctor later informs that her test results are normal and suggests that her collapse might have been due to anemia. He feels a wave of relief that the situation isn't more serious. However, he notices that she often lowers her head when she feels uncomfortable, a habit that has become more frequent as of late due to her ailment. She apologizes to him for the trouble she has caused, but he worries that her tendency to apologize and feel down on herself might actually worsen her condition. In an effort to lift her spirits, he smiles and mentions that he's in the mood for chicken nanban. He reveals that when she is feeling low, he often requests a dish that's a bit more elaborate, knowing it will perk her up. True to form, she brightens at the suggestion and remarks that they need to buy some chicken. He reassures her that they can save it for tomorrow, offering to cook dinner himself at night so she can continue to rest. He doesn't want to see her feeling down on herself any longer. The next morning, he worriedly asks his grandmother if she is feeling better. She reassures him that she is fine and advises him to go to school. He reluctantly agrees and tells her he'll be off. Then she warmly wishes him a good day. As he walks away, he can't help but feel a lingering sense of worry, wondering if he's being overly concerned. He also recalls the strange hallucination from the day before and looks back to see his grandmother waving goodbye. When he arrives at school, he notices a crowd gathered and hears from a girl that someone famous is there. Although he's not particularly interested, he decides to check it out. As he approaches, the noise from the crowd suddenly dies down and everyone turns to stare at him and shock. A man standing in the center of the crowd casually addresses him, saying that he has finally arrived and that his coffee has long since gone cold. The girl beside him excitedly asks if he knows the man, but he, still dazed, responds that he doesn't know and wonders why the man knows his name. Curiously, Kate quickly searches the internet on his phone and discovers that the man is Yoji Amane, a novelist who recently went viral. As he approaches, he reveals to Karu that while he may technically be a novelist, writing is just a hobby and he is actually there for Ku as part of his day job. Shocked, Haru asks him if he is really there for him. Yua explains that he became famous online after a portion of one of his interviews was deliberately clipped out of context by a random internet troll. As they stand there exchanging glances, he begins to speak about the abundance of inhuman ghouls that lurk on social media, mentioning that these ghouls approach him as if they were real humans. Confused, he asks what he means by like and whether these people aren't actually human. Yoji clarifies that he doesn't consider people who lack humanity to be human at all. Troubled by this perspective, Karu thinks it's no wonder he's faced backlash online, but decides to just listen for now. He can't help but wonder why, if he truly believes this, he would say it out loud despite appearing reasonable. Yoji's logic seems off-kilter. A girl nervously approaches him and asks for his autograph. Initially, he declines, Stating that he doesn't want to give autographs. Seiru, surprised by Yoji's reluctance, warns him that he might go viral again if he refuses. Eventually he gives in and signs the autograph for the girl, who beams with happiness. He observes that while Yoji complained about it, he still went ahead and did it anyway. As she expresses her gratitude, Yoji smiles and remarks that if his simple autograph can bring so much joy, he couldn't be more grateful. He then wonders, as a man of the arts, whether he should be pandering to people's desires. In this way, Kaoru smiles, thinking that his initial reluctance was just an act of coyness, and starts to reconsider his opinion of him. Perhaps he isn't such a bad guy after all. As he heads towards his car, he suggests that Kaoru join him for a rousing cup of tea while he taken aback reminds him that he has school. He laughs and suggests skipping it. He hesitates, pointing out that Yoji was just talking about humanity. Finally, Yua reveals that he is there at the request of Kei's father. Kei pauses for a moment, seemingly lost in thought, before curiously asking him if he was a friend of his father. He invites Kei to get into the car, assuring him that he will explain everything as they settle in. He nervously requests that Yoji give him a break, warning that his homeroom teacher will be upset if he skips school. With a reassuring smile, Yoji promises to apologize on his behalf, asking if that arrangement would work for him. Yoji then gets to the point, revealing that he has come to protect him and his grandmother, and to collect the ring. Kwa, puzzled, shows him the ring and asks if this is the one he's referring to. Noticing the ring, Yoji's expression turns serious, and he worriedly asks him why he is wearing it. Kei explains that his father put it on him, and that no matter how hard he tries, it doesn't come off. Yua, spotting a red light ahead, remarks that the timing is perfect. He then raises his hand near Kei's face and begins explaining the connection between the ring and something called Shiryo. Yoji further elaborates that Ku can neither see nor touch a Shiryo unless he believes in its existence. Intrigued, Kei asks what Ario is. Yoji replies that the first step is witnessing someone interacting with a Shiryo. Once Kaoru sees it and starts to think there might be something there, then he's in the clear. Without warning, Yoji suddenly squeezes Ario near Kei's face, startling him. Yoji calmly explains that the spiritual and paranormal reals are strongly influenced by one's psychological state, and that these entities known as Shiryo or death spirits devour souls and bring death to people. Still processing this new information, C recalls seeing these creatures when his grandmother collapsed, and nervously asks if those were Shiryo. Yoji quickly inquires about Yo's current whereabouts. Kei explains that she's usually at her hula dance class at the rec center, although she might not be there due to her recent injury. Yoji urges him to call her anyway, speculating that Kaoru might possess a natural ability to see Shiro. As Ku dials her number, he suddenly spots his grandmother walking on an overpass. Ignoring Yoji's calls to wait, he steps out of the car and heads toward her. Yoji, trying to park the car, warns him to be cautious. As Seiru approaches the overpass, an officer notices them standing on the road and orders them to move their car, reminding them that they can't stop there. Yoji advises Seiru to stay calm and not to agitate the Shiryo. Kaoru finally reaches the overpass, where Yco turns around and smiles warmly at her grandson. Alarmed, he tries to warn her about the Shiryo. She responds calmly, telling him she bought some chicken, but before she can say more, a massive amount of Shiryo suddenly emerges from her mouth. Kei is momentarily paralyzed with shock as the Shiryo merge to form a menacing demon. The demon places its hand on Yo's chest and begins to extract her soul, which remains tethered to her body. Panicked Kerr recalls Yoji's earlier warning about creatures that devour souls and bring death. He sprints towards the demon, determined to save his grandmother, and lunges at it, causing her soul to fall from the demon's grasp and reabsorb into her body. Furious, he yells at the demon, demanding that it keep its hands off his grandmother. In response, the gigantic Shiryo delivers a devastating punch to him, sending him crashing into a fence. Kei begins bleeding from his nose and mouth, even losing a tooth. Terrified, he realizes that he had been overconfident and that the Sharat was going to kill him. As the Shiryo turns back to Yo, pulling out her soul once again, Kei forces himself to stand, realizing that now is not the time to be afraid. He insults the Shiryo, calling it stupid, and sprints toward it, delivering a punch as his ring begins to emit a powerful aura. In a flashback, he remembers his father on his death, but giving him the ring and telling him it would protect him as Korra relentlessly punches the Shiryo. Its head is sent flying off, leaving him bewildered by what's happening. He recalls his father's words, the ring would stand in for him and protect Kuu. Suddenly a soul emerges from the ring and stands beside Kuu. Another flashback shows his father while placing the ring on Kei's finger, instructing him to remember this day because the men of the Yo family are destined to be plagued by Shiro due to their ancestors' misdeeds. However, he assures Kuu that the ring will protect both him and his grandmother, who smiling reassures his father not to worry. Back in the present, as Kuu fights the demon Shiryo, he vows to protect both himself and his grandmother. However, just as he begins to feel hope, he is shocked to see the Shiro's head regenerating. He wonders how he can possibly defeat it if it keeps healing. As the Shiryo charges at him again, Yoji arrives just in time, slicing the Shiryo in half with his sword. He remarks that if Koro were to die, his trip would have been pointless. He then questions why Kei summoned the Shiryo from the ring instead of trying to exterminate it. He asks if Kwo wouldn't normally run from a monster, noting how scary they are, and teases Kuu for being quite an odd person. Out of breath, Karu explains that he simply wants to save his grandmother and asks if that's really so strange. While understanding that Kei's love for his grandmother is the driving force behind his courage, summons Chidori, a Shiro girl, from his ring. Supporting his grandmother, Sieru asks if Chitari is also a Shiryo. Yoji explains that the ring acts as a sort of collar that allows him to command Shiryo, trapping them within. He points to the demon Shiryo, explaining that it's a wild, naturally spawned Shiryo that tries to consume as many human souls as possible. These creatures lie dormant in human bodies, gradually devouring their souls until they are caught, as in this case. Extermination is the solution, but there's a trick to it. Yoji decides to use this opportunity to show him how to hunt Shiro. Churi transforms into a sword, which Yoji uses to slice the demon Shiryo into multiple small sections. As the demon's soul appears, Yoji offers it as a snack for Chitari, who eagerly consumes it. Satisfied, Yoji remarks that fighting Shiryo with Shiro is the essence of what a necromancer does, and it's also his day job. He then reveals that Kei's father was an old work friend of his and an extremely skilled necromancer. However, he stops short, saying it's a long story, handing Sieru his business card. Yoji introduces himself as part of the Ain spiritual medium agency. He then asks if it sounds fishy. Kao reads the card aloud, and Yoji explains that Kei's father had requested this fishy agency to protect him. After exchanging a glance, Karo curiously asks if it isn't a bit strange for a stranger to suddenly appear claiming he will protect him and his grandmother. Yoji admits that it may seem strange, but he explains that he has already been paid for the job, so he can't not protect them. He adds that Kuu had a pretty close call back there. Kuu, clenching his fist, acknowledges that there was some reason his father gave him the ring, and that he has finally figured out what it is he believes that his father meant for him to protect himself and his grandmother on his own. Yoji looks at him blankly, recalling a memory of Cork father sitting in a wheelchair on the beach. In the memory, his father asked Yoji to take care of his son, to which he initially refused, saying it wasn't fair. However, Kei's father, smiling, apologized for the burden, prompting him to reluctantly agree, though he insisted he never actually accepted the request. Back on the overpass, as he begins to walk away, Kei calls out asking for a favor. He requests that Yoji let him work at the agency, declaring that he is going to become a necromancer too. Yoji, turning back with a smile, realizes that this is what his father meant by take care. He comments that he has a feeling there's no point in saying no. Karu, still somewhat confused, asks how he knows this. Yua simply replies that he can just tell. Although Kei acknowledges that Yoji is right, he remains puzzled by the situation, and so this is how Karu Uno and Yoji Ain first met. Kuo is now working part-time at Yoji A's agency. While at the office, Yoji picks up a call and comments that the discussion is splitting hairs, questioning whether the word bitter has multiple meanings. He uses that adults preferring bitter coffee might be related to the bitter experiences they face at work. Realizing he's derailing the conversation, he apologizes and explains to the caller that today is the first day of a part-timer, and with that he ends the call. After hanging up, he casually sits on the table and mentions that the word for work in French is travail. As Cieru curiously wipes the table, he asks what Yoji is talking about. Still in his own world, Yoji nonchalant explains that the word travail comes from a term meaning torture. Karu, clearly annoyed, shouts at him for being so dramatic. Yoji then informs him that a client called so he can head home. Frustrated, K points out that all he's done is clean. Yoji, unbothered, tell that it's fine. Labor tends to drain a person's spirit, so it might be better for him to stop while he's ahead. K begins to wonder if Yoji even works at all at the parking lot. Yoji offers to give him a ride home. C agrees and thanks him. As they get into the car, he reflects on his father's words about protecting himself and his grandmother from Shiro and becoming a necromancer. He thinks about the significance of the ring his father gave him, seeing it as a symbol of his father's wish for him to carry on the legacy. As they drive, K spots Ario and casually mentions it to Yoji without much concern. Yoji replies that someone will probably exterminate it, so there's no need to worry. However, he soon turns to him and asks if he wants to try taking care of it himself, teasing him about wanting to become a necromancer. Karo, caught off guard, stares blankly. Yoji smiles and asks if he's serious about following through with this path. Haru confirms that he is. They stop the car and step out to find Shiro near a drunken man. Yoji observes that the Shiryo isn't much of a threat, but Ku insists it looks dangerous. Yoji suggests summoning the Shiryo from the ring, saying if he can do that it'll be an easy task. Confused, he questions what Yoji means by ease. Yoji reminds him that the spiritual and paranormal are strongly influenced by one psychological state. Ku, intrigued, acknowledges this, but still feels unsure about summoning the Shiryo on command. Reflecting on his past experience, he remembers how his desperation to say his grandmother gave him the strength to summon Ario. However, this time the stakes don't feel as personal, it's just a stranger in danger. He wonders if he can find the same motivation to help someone he doesn't know standing there. Blankly, he feels conflicted. Yoji, observing from a distance, remarks that if he can't summon the Shiro whenever he needs to, perhaps he isn't suited for this line of work. After all, he advises Karu to get his body and spirit fired up. Karu turns Yoji's words over in his mind, thinking back to why he wants to be a necromancer in the first place. It's not just his father's wish, there's more to it. He recalls a memory from his father's funeral. His aunt and uncle had approached him, announcing they had talked it over with the family and decided to take him in. He remembers how he resisted telling them he didn't want to move from Tokyo. His uncle had angrily called him an idiot, telling him that they were the only ones offering to take care of him and that it was a legal matter. Now they expected him to cooperate. Listen to his aunt and uncle's conversation afterward. Kei overheard them discussing the financial benefits of selling his father's house. His uncle had seen it as a prime opportunity to make a profit, while his aunt expressed curiosity about how the sale would work. Kei felt the sense of dread, recognizing this as a path to an unhappy future he didn't want any part of. In the midst of this, his grandmother had stepped in, offering to sell her house to take care of him. Despite his uncle's skepticism about the value of her home, she stood firm, telling him that she cherished him more than money. This moment had struck Crow deeply, giving him the determination to stay by her side. Back in the present, Hero taps into that same sense of resolve, repeating to himself that he has pep in his step. He lunges at the Shiryo, slamming it to the ground. As he charges toward it again, he realizes that his desire to protect his grandmother fuels his strength. As long as he keeps that in mind, he'll be able to summon his power whenever needed. The Shiryo stands up once more, but Kei knows he needs to find its soul. He feels a sense of urgency, worried because he doesn't know where to locate it. Just then, his own Shiryo appears placing hand on his head and telling him to let it feast. It knows where the soul is. C hesitates, but remembers his father's legacy and pushes forward with renewed determination. He lunges at the demon Shiryo, piercing its chest and extracting the soul. He throws it to his own Shiryo, who eagerly consumes it. His Shiryo then tells him to call it sure and assures him that it will respond whenever needed. Yoji, impressed, praises him and suggests they move on to the next job. Surprised, he asks what Yoji means by that. Yoji clarifies that he has passed his test. Smiling, Kei realizes he had been testing him all along. They drive to a mansion where a servant offers to park Yoji's car. As they enter, Ko is curious about the building. Yua explains that it's the headquarters of the Shiryo Sorcery Society, where necromancers gather and conduct their work. As they walk through the hall, Ku is unsettled by a tree that bears human heads instead of fruit. Yua brushes off his concern and urges him to keep moving. On the rooftop, Yoji apologizes for being late. The man, whom Kei recognizes from TV, hands Yoji a gift of coffee, which he excitedly accepts. Haru quickly looks up the man and learns that he is the president of a prominent company. He muses about Yoji's connections and wonders if this client is actually from a legitimate business. Yoji, ever casual, summons his Shiro Chadari, signaling that it's time to get to work. Haru stands in awe, realizing how much more he has to learn about Yoji Ain, his father's old work partner and a skilled necromancer at the headquarters of the Shiryo Sorcery Society in Tokyo, specifically on the second floor. Yoji informs Ku that they've accepted a request, but there's something they need to handle first. Chitari, clinging to Yoji, mentions that she's hungry. Sieru wonders if she can speak as well, but sets the thought aside and asks him what the next task is. Yoji reveals that it's Kei's membership registration. They need to go through the formal process. Curiously, C muses to himself that this sounds like signing up for a point card. Yoji then explains that exterminating Shiryo without being registered can lead to penalties. Kei smiles and remarks that it wouldn't be too big of a deal if he didn't exterminate that old man's Shiryo. Yoji reassures him, saying that it shouldn't be an issue. Worried, he raises his voice, asking it. Yoji truly believed that. While walking through the hall, a man approaches Yua and comments on how rare it is to see him around, asking if he could lend a hand with some work. Yoji flatly replies no. Another woman, curious, asks if he got into trouble again since he was summoned by the council chairman. Yoji responds nonchalant, stating that he's trying to ignore the situation. Another man chimes in, suggesting that if he is stressed they should go out for drinks. Yoji stares blankly at the man and remarks that if only he hadn't driven there he might have considered it. Kei, observing his behavior, wonders if it's really just drinking that's bothering him. As they stand in the lounge, Haru notices the presence of other necromancers, though it doesn't come as a surprise given their surroundings. Eventually, Fukuchi, the Spirit Sorcery Society's general affairs clerk, approaches and playfully teases Yoji about drinking, reminding him that he made her come all this way. Yoji brushes it off, telling the previous man that he has to complete Kei's registration first. The man replies that he'll be around, suggesting he holler when he's finished. Before leaving, the man turns to Ku, asking if they've met before. Haru politely says no, though the man starts scratching his head, clearly still pondering. Fuku then leads them to a spiritual hall where cork registration ritual will take place. She explains that he will be summoning his Shurion next to the Reika spirit fruit and requests that he mentally prepare himself. They will be measuring the amount of ether drawn from his Shiryo, with the Reika fruit increasing in size based on how much ether it absorbs. Normally, it's about the size of a bowling ball, but it can swell to the size of an exercise ball, depending on the E levels. She then asks for Koro's ID, which she hands over, casually accepting it. Fugu's demeanor suddenly shifts as she realizes he is from the Yuo family. Saying aloud, she unintentionally grabs the attention of the other necromancers in the lounge, who begin to stare at him. Feeling self-conscious, Kei turns his head, wondering why they're staring at him. Startled, she speculates whether he is the son of Mr. Yuno. At this point, the man from earlier seems to recognize him, remarking that he thought the boy looked Familiar curiously, he confirms that Koru is Itsuki's child. He then walks over to Yoji, stating that it's time to clarify his position. The man reveals that he rarely accepts any of the spirit sorcery society's job offers, and in fact does any work at all. He acknowledges that the council often points this out, but he typically ignores them. They try to be courteous, but Yoji seldom engages. Despite being a nuisance, the man admits that Yoji's skills are truly exceptional, which is why they usually let him operate on his own terms. Yoji smiles and expresses his gratitude, but Mizu, turning his attention to Kuu, says the boy's situation is different. He questions whether Yoji is pushing him to become a necromancer out of some sentimental attachment to Itsuki. A female necromancer Tia chimes in, calling Yoji lame and mentioning that she knows he and Mr. Uno were once partners. Mizu interjects, telling Terera to keep her personal thoughts to herself and insisting that it's inappropriate to involve Kuu in this. Just for revenge, Ko, momentarily lost in thought, wonders about the mention of revenge and whether it implies someone killed his father. Mizu then presses Yoji, asking if he has any ulterior motives and demands an explanation. Yoji, remaining calm, raises a finger to his lips, signaling for Mizu to quiet down, and gestures towards the spiritual room. As Mizu looks in that direction, he notices the rake of fruit swelling massively, spilling out of the room along with Koru. Cheerio, Shirshi. Shocked, Mizu exclaims in disbelief, realizing the sheer size of the other emanating from Shirshi. He remarks in astonishment, wondering how this could be possible. Kuu speaks up, stating that ever since Yoji mentioned certain things about his father's death, he's had a gut feeling that Shiryo was involved. His desire to uncover the truth about what really happened isn't because he's being forced into it, it's a personal mission. Turning to face everyone, Kei declares that this is about him and his pursuit is entirely of his own volition. Yoji takes this moment to affirm Mayu's concerns, adding that he does not bring him along just because Mr. Itsuki asked him to. It's actually more work than he'd prefer. He recalls the moment when Koru, breathless at the overpass, expressed his desire to save his grandmother and asked if that was really so strange. Yoji reveals that seeing him so determined, his body reacting rather than freezing up in fear of the Shiryo, reignited something in him. Both Karu and Mizu glance at him as he poses a question to Mizu. Isn't it he, Mizu, who's truly stuck dwelling on Mr. Itsuki's memory? Mizu pauses to reflect on this for a moment before conceding that if it's Kei's decision, he has no right to stop him. He hands a business card, prompting him to wonder what it's for. Mizu explains that if Yoji does anything reckless, he should contact him and he'll even give him some money for his trouble. Haru, both amused and humbled, accepts the card. Mizu gives a teasing laugh to Yoji, who looks less than thrilled and remarks that it's pretty cruel of him. Mizu, still in good spirits, tells Kao to do his best on the drive back from headquarters. Hua brings up the request for next week and asks if Koru is free that weekend. Hiro confirms that he is. He then mentions that if Koru wants to learn more about his father, he'll talk, but he'd rather avoid it if possible. He holds up a cassette tape and Kei notices his father's handwriting on it. Yoji admits that if he speaks about it, his personal feelings are bound to get mixed, and he smiles and reassures him, saying that Yoji doesn't have to speak if that's the case. He adds, it seems Yoji believes that he will learn the truth through his work as a necromancer. Yoji inserts the cassette into the player, noting that if he were to share one thing, it's that when someone does a favor for Kuu, he will naturally want to repay it. He says that's just a normal response. As the cassette begins to play, Kei listens to the music of a summer J-pop song that he doesn't recognize. He reflects that while he might not know the song, it seems to relax Yoji more than he's ever seen. He wonders if this is because Yoji knows a version of his father that he never did. Meanwhile, at a kindergarten, two kids are amazed as they watch a floating wooden block they've been playing with a demon. Shiryo, holding the block, takes one of the children's souls and bites into it. As the demon Shiryo looks out the window, he notices Yoji and C walking outside. It immediately recognizes that the duo are necromancers I and Yoji. First, it concludes from his confident demeanor that he is a skilled necromancer and debates whether it should flee. However, its gaze shifts to Karu, detecting his inexperience, and the demon Shiryo feels a surge of confidence. The scent of K's other gives it away that he's an amateur. The demon Shiryo uses that necromancer souls have a distinct scent, rich with either much more flavorful than regular human souls. It's been surviving on low-quality souls to avoid detection, but now contemplates taking the risk of consuming a necromancer, considering it a rare opportunity. Inside the classroom, a young girl suddenly clutches her stomach. Feeling an inexplicable pain, Yoji, now holding a report, explains to Ku that they are dealing with a grade cert I. He clarifies that the grade signifies both the level of danger and intelligence of the Shiryo. The one they hunted previously was a grade me. It was weak. This time they're facing a much more cunning and powerful opponent. However, Yoji points out that they have an additional problem on their hands. Just as he finishes speaking, a group of children surrounds him, tugging at his clothes, completely fascinated by him. Clearly uncomfortable, he attempts to shh them away, expressing his frustration. Are their hands covered in snow, not in mud? He can't deal with creatures that can't have a rational conversation, but the children continue to pester him. Kara watches, amused by how much the children seem to like Yoji. Despite his clear disinterest, he tries to calm Yoji down, urging him to quit complaining and get on with the task at hand. Meanwhile, the demon Shiryo observes from the window, noting that it has been a long time since it last encountered necromancers. Standing outside a building, an elderly woman accompanied by a child informs Ku that the structure before them is a temple. She adds that the temple also operates a kindergarten. K acknowledges this and muses internally about how they haven't yet exchanged proper introductions. She continues, explaining that the chief priest had requested a corporate chairman friend to introduce him to an exorcist. Casually, K introduces himself, stating that he works for the Ain Spirit Medium Agency and that his name is Uno. However, before Karo can finish his introduction, the woman interrupts him, scolding him harshly. She rebukes if he has no shame. She criticizes him, claiming that someone as young as him should not be engaging in work like being a spirit medium, accusing him of conning people for easy money. She warns that if Kor continues down this path, he will become addicted to it and eventually his humanity will rot away. Karu, appearing visibly tired of the lady's unsolicited advice, remains silent. She then shifts topics, telling Karo that lately the children have been reporting strange sightings, and more concerning, several of them have fallen ill. At that moment, the child in her care holds up a toy, but she sighs in disappointment, informing C that some of the children have even been hospitalized. The child then asks her if she knows what the toy is, and while she listens attentively, she remarks how children should always be happy and healthy. Karo, maintaining his silence, watches as the lady gently admits to the child that she doesn't know what the toy is. She then instructs Ku to get more details from Yuko-sensei, a young woman standing nearby. Noting that she is the one handling the situation, Karu, now looking more serious, responds with a firm okay, and moves toward the woman. As Ku approaches her, he momentarily spaces out, wondering if this young woman is indeed Yuko-sensei. He quickly notices that she seems to be observing Yoji, who is sitting nearby, engrossed in a book while completely ignoring the children playing around him. Karu questions internally if she is intentionally watching Yoji, and wonders if Yoji had entrusted him with gathering information while he leisurely reads a book. Suddenly, Yuko places a finger to her lips, signaling Karu to be quiet. She explains that the child she is holding tends to wake up at the sound of scary stories, so she can't let him overhear anything disturbing. She quietly asks Sieru to return later after everyone has left, adding that they finish on weekends at noon, so he should come back around 2 after the children have been abused. Home. Sieru, slightly amused by how her request tickled his ear, realizes as she means the children by everyone. He agrees, promising to return, and walks away. As he is leading, she calls out again, asking Ku to tell Mr. Yoji that she says hello. Ku turns back, puzzled, wondering if she knows Yoji personally. Later, Yoji remarks to Karu that this is the first time the two of them have Worked on a request together attempting to lighten the mood. Yoji claps his hands and admits he's trying to keep things bright and cheerful. However, in an awkward tone he asks Kuu if he is coming off as a bit creepy. Kuru, giving Yoji a strange look, tells him to act normal. Yoji, understanding the hint, shifts his gaze upward as if trying to recall something. He then asks Kuru if he remembers the Shiryo grade they are dealing with. Kuru confirms that he does and states that it is a grade C Shiryo. Yoji explains that the grade reflects both the difficulty of the request and the intelligence level of the Shiryo. He further elaborates that the real danger begins with grade C Shiryo or higher. Grade B Shiryo tend to form groups, and grade Shiryo often take on leadership roles. Until now they had only encountered GR Shiryo, making this current task much more challenging. Despite the increase in difficulty, Yoji suggests that Kum might actually find this battle easier than his previous experiences. He offers a piece of advice, saying that if Kuru finds himself stuck, he should listen to Shirshuan's voice. Suddenly Yoji senses something amiss. Reacting quickly, he summons Chidori from his ring just in time to narrowly avoid an attack from the demon Shiryo. Chidori swiftly transforms into a phantom, adopting a circular form, and Yoji throws her like a boomerang toward the demon standing on the roof's edge in one fluid motion. Chatyuri slices through the demon's face, splitting it down the middle from its teeth to its cheeks. On her return she slices through the demon's body, cleaving it in half before landing back in Yoji's hand. The demon's mutilated body falls from the rooftop and crashes to the ground. Observing the scene, notes that the demon is regenerating. Yoji, however, appears surprised, realizing that the Shiryo isn't regenerating as expected. He recalls that the spear used in the attack had been crafted from bone and flesh, not ordinary material. Meanwhile, Kao races toward the classroom only to be horrified upon discovering the demon Shiryo holding two young children. Momentarily dazed, Haru struggles to comprehend how the demon could create clones. Shaking off his confusion, he focuses on the more immediate threat. The demon has two weak children in its clutches. The Shiryo mocks Kuu, holding the children up and referring to them as two pieces of trash. Infuriated by the demon's callous words, clenches his fists. The Shiryo continues taunting him, noting that while the children's souls are worthless compared to Kus, it's heard that all human souls are supposedly equal. The demon then proposes a vile offer: if Korov allows himself to be devoured, it will spare the children. The demon laughs, teasing Kao by calling it a favorable 2-for-1 trade. It goes on to insult the children, further describing their undeveloped souls as tasteless and calling the souls of elderly people rotten. To punctuate its point, the Shiryo lightly scratches one of the children's heads with its claw, drawing blood. Karu, now consumed with rage, warns the demon to stop. UNF the Shiryo laughs and pressures Kaoru to make a decision. In that moment, Kei recalls the old lady's words about children deserving to be happy and healthy, and Yoji's advice, hinting that Kaoru may find the battle easier than anticipated. Suddenly, Kuu understands the meaning behind their words. Just as the demon prepares to strike again, Kaoru springs into action, summoning Shirshur from his ring. He steadies himself, whispering words of encouragement to boost his resolve. He says to himself that his heart and spirit will drive him forward, and prepares for the battle that lies ahead. Worried, Yoji observes the increasing number of demon Shiryo clones appearing on the roof. He mutters that they're coming out in droves. Meanwhile, Chitari, appearing unimpressed, casually asks if there are no snacks. Yoji confirms that there wouldn't be any as the clones lack souls. Persisting, Sherry repeats her desire for snacks. Yoji, looking blankly at her, ignores her comment and muses to himself, wondering whether Kuu would be all right in a restaurant. Yoji examines a photo of Karu in a karate suit, proudly holding up a victory sign. Yoji remarked slightly that he got his hands on this through certain means. Kei, irritated, demanded to know what he meant by that. Yoji shifts the conversation, asking if C had taken first place in the tournament. Casually, C replies second. Yoji, with a teasing smile, comments he always wonders why Kaoru seems so oddly gutsy. Kei then explains that he hadn't practiced katai in a long time, as he quit upon his father's advice, adding that maybe his father had sensed what was going to happen. Yoji grinned, remarking that being good at karai wouldn't help Karu in exterminating Shiro. Haru, intrigued, gives Yoji a curious look. In response, Yoji explains that a necromancer's technique relies more on their mind than their body. Haru asks for further clarification, prompting Yoji to reveal that necromancy is an unusual form of sorcery employed by both Shiryo and necromancers. He explains that Shiryo used necromancy to conceal their souls and protect themselves, and any requests rank C or higher typically involve this type of Shiryo. He further emphasizes that eliminating Shiryo capable of necromancy is the core challenge for any necromancer. During K's confrontation with the demon Shiryo, he reflects on what needs to be done: save the hostages and locate the Shiro's soul to destroy it. As he fights, he notices a strange bud forming on the Shiro's face, from which multiple clones begin to emerge. Startled, K realizes the demon is reproducing itself while battling the clone. He expresses concern that he couldn't see the demon's soul, yet he forced himself to stay calm, reminding himself that there should only be one soul and it had to be found in one of the clones. He focuses on determining where the real Shiryo's soul is hidden. As Koru dodges the Shiryo punches, he has an epiphany: the real Shiro must be the one holding the hostages. However, when he quickly surveys the room, he gets shocked to discover that the Shiryo has disappeared. He begins to suspect that it is hiding with the hostages. Just then, one of the clones grabs his arm, momentarily leaving Kao uncertain of what to do. He remembered Yoji's advice: if he found himself stuck, he should listen to Shurshuan's voice. In response, a black aura emerges from the ring and Shurshur materializes. Shurshur remarks Koro finally looked his way, adding, if he gets this habit of not relying on others from his father. He explains that whatever K feels, Shurshur feels as well, and vice versa. Sensing that Shurshur had spotted something, K asks for guidance. Shurshur urges him to focus. Haru widens his eyes, sharpening his focus, and notices something blurry on the far side of the room. He wonders if it could be the demon's soul. Shurshur encourages him to proceed. Empowered, Koru felt a surge of energy, and with newfound resolve he slashes a clone of the demon Shiryo in half with his fists. In doing so, he realizes that employing Shiro doesn't just mean using them as tools, it means forging a bond with them and enlisting their help. Meanwhile, while the real demon Shiryo, sensing danger, realizes that its soul has been detected. Panicking, it attempted to escape through the window with the children and tow. However, before it could flee, Kara struck with a powerful punch, piercing his hand into the demon's chest. Though the attack hurts the Shiryo momentarily, it manages to shift its soul into another clone and dashes for the door, muttering to itself that it was close. If he would take the full brunt of that, he would be a goner. Shiryo admits to underestimating C's abilities, acknowledging that he was more formidable than expected. As the demon races across the playground, strategizes that it's time to start over. News he better hurry and find a new hunting ground. Determined not to make the same mistake, he vows to target only weak prey next time. However, his escape plan is abruptly interrupted when he notices Yoji and Chidori waiting for him at the gate. Frozen in shock, the demon Shiryo briefly ponders what Yoji could be doing there. It then recognizes Shitari, hoping it is some sort of joke. The reality sinks in and Shiryo realizes the true gravity of the situation. He thinks in despair that Kid Kuru, his spirit, must have been Shurshur before it can react further. Yoji swiftly intervenes, eliminating the demon Shiro without hesitation. After completing his task, Yoji looks down at the fallen Shiryo and remarks, even in death their mere intelligence is a curse. They can't even rest in peace in their final moments. As Chidori is about to consume the demon Shiro's soul, she notices Kao running toward them with Shurshur and the children from a distance. Ku calls out Mr. Yoji to get his attention. Yoji turns and praises him for successfully rescuing the children. Out of breath, Haru expresses his relief, thanking God that the demon Shiro didn't escape. He explains that he was planning to chase after the part of the Shiravit split off, but he found the kids hidden in a closet and decided to prioritize their safety. Yoji smiles, approving of his decision and reassures him that since Carol handled it all, Yoji had to do was finish the job. Chitari, with a hungry look at the demon's soul, ultimately offers it to Shurshur. Yoji smiles, acknowledging that the credit for the mission's success goes to both Karu and Shurshur. Shurshur accepts the soul and Kuo thanks Shuri for the gesture. Yoji then informs him that although he finished the request, Karu seems to have mastered detecting souls and controlling Shiryu. Looking at Karo with a sense of pride, Yoji praises him for a job well done, who, smiling in return, reflects that since Yoji rarely lies, a compliment from him feels especially rewarding. As they prepare to leave from the parking lot, an elderly woman approaches, calling out for them to wait. She confirms Kei's name and then apologizes. Curiously, Ko asks what she's apologizing for. The old woman explains that earlier she had accused his work of being a scam, but now after witnessing what happened with her own eyes, she regrets her words. She recalls how she saw the kids floating and being taken by the demon before she blacked out. Unable to help them respectfully, she takes Koro's hands, explaining that her job is to care for other people's children and she treats them like her own. Bowing in gratitude, she thanks Kara profusely, telling him how grateful she is. Karu smiles, touched by her heartfelt thanks. Later in the car, Yoji reveals that he is supposed to meet Yuko at cafe that evening. He asks Seiru if he still has enough stamina left to join, to which Seiru replies yes. At Nishojugo Station, Yuko meets with them, sharing an anecdote from her past. She reveals that a long time ago she used to dislike children. However, after she quit being a necromancer and began thinking about her next steps in life, she figured becoming a childcare worker would be a stable career. She laughs at the irony, noting how things have changed. Yoji, meanwhile, brings up that Koro is interested in learning about Mr. Ituki, Kei's father. Yuko Andrade asks if that's why Yoji has been so focused on finding old documents. Kuo wonders if Yuko is an old friend of his father, and Yoji, suspecting that might be the reason for this meeting, Yoji laughs, joking that Yuko is better at keeping track of things than he is. Annoyed, Yuko retorts that Yoji is terrible at keeping anything tidy. Shifting the conversation, she asks Kao what exactly he wants to know. After a pause, who says that he would really like to understand how his father died. Yuko, seemingly expecting this, takes out a picture from her file and hands it to him. She introduces the man in the photo as Ryo, a necromancer once considered the greatest prodigy in history. She adds that since that picture was taken, Ryo has disappeared without a trace. Curiosity piqued, Kara asks about prodigy necromancers. Yoji interjects Eli Lilly, calling Ryo an idiot, explained that Ryo pursued the necromancer's ultimate taboo, reviving the dead, resulting in countless sacrifices. Karu, taken aback, wonders why Yoji's comment about Ryo feels so charged. Yuko then explains that Mr. Itsuki was the one who stopped Ryo's rampage. She reveals that his death was due to a deficiency in his soul sustained during the battle with Ryo. C begins to piece things together, realizing that Ryo is responsible for his father's death. Yoji shows Kuo another picture revealing that Shushi Ring lost its power during that battle. He explains that Mr. Ituki sealed Ryo's power at the cost of Shurshur. Yoji points out the ring in the photo now on Koring finger and expresses amazement that Karu has managed to summon Shurshur despite the seal. Yoji warns Kei that with Ryo's seal now broken, Ryo might eventually come after him, mainly because Shurshur is Ryo powerful enough to be Ryo's natural enemy. He then shows Karu another picture revealing that he plans to assemble the remaining members of Kon, a necromancer group that once opposed Ryo. Looking at the photo, Kerr was surprised by how young his father looks. Yoji then reveals that Mr. Ituki served as the leader of Kon. Karu, staring at the photo, points out a person on the right side and asks if it's who he thinks it is. Yuko teasingly remarks if he doesn't look cheeky. Haru laughs, admitting he's in no position to say. Annoyed, Yoji chimes in, noting that Karu pretty much did. Yuko continues teasing, telling Yoji he'll always be cheeky. Seiru, feeling a mix of frustration and determination, reminds himself that he can't get complacent just because he completed his first mission. He knows his father's killer is a prodigy necromancer and that Shurshur is Ryo's natural enemy. More challenges lie ahead as the conversation winds down. Yoji turns to Yuko and admits that inviting her was the right decision. Confused Kara wonders what they're talking about. Yuko smiling asks if it's time for her to come over. She glances toward another table, signaling someone to join them. A beautiful young woman approaches, and Yuko introduces her as her niece Fiori. Kurashiki Yoji explains that while he wanted Yo's help in training Karu since she's retired, he asked Midori instead. Midori, hesitant, expressing self-doubt and questions whether she is worthy of teaching Mr. Itsuki's son. Yuko reassures her, encouraging Midori by reminding her that she's already Kei's senior as a necromancer. Yoji then officially introduces Midori as Kei's new instructor. As the conversation unfolds, Haru finds himself overwhelmed, still processing all the information. The next day, Midori catches his attention by calling out Korra's name from behind. Kei gets surprised to see her there. Two strangers nearby notice Midori as well, praising her beauty and commenting on how she seems to be in love. She asks Kei if he is free after school. Kuu, still shocked by her presence, admits that he is free but asks why she's at his school. Curiously, she wonders if Mr. Yoji didn't tell him anything. Kei recalls Yoji asking him to work with her. Midori explains that she'll share more details after school, but that they don't have time right now. Kud checks the time on his phone and realizes she's right. He's about to be late. As Midori walks away, she turns and tells him he can call her Midori and she'll call him Kei. He confirms this with a smile, musing to himself that she's very assertive and straightforward. In class, before the lecture begins, a boy approaches Crow, calling his name. Kao recognizes him as Manami. Leaning in, Manami tells Crow that he saw him earlier walking to school with Midori. Kashiki. Kuu, unfazed, responds that they didn't exactly walk together. Curious, he asks if Manami knows her. Manami laughs and reveals that Midori is becoming quite popular within the community. Kuu, intrigued, asks what he means by community. Mami explains that she is the mysterious transfer student from class 1. whose elegant demeanor is getting a lot of attention. Shocked, Karu exclaims that she is a first student a whole grade below him. Mami laughs again, adding that he's heard she's incredibly smart and even Aki the transfer exam later. By the riverside near the hillside, Midori asks Sieru for a round of applause, declaring it's time to begin little Miss Midori's necromancy course. She explains that her task is to teach him necromancy. C acknowledges this, but asks before they start why she was at his school. Midori sigh, admitting that Yoji didn't explain things well. She reveals that Yoji asked her to protect Kuu at school since he couldn't attend himself. Kei nods in understanding, musing that Yoji doesn't miss a thing. She makes a stubborn face, revealing she didn't expect Yoji to suddenly drop the responsibility of training Kuu into her lap. She admits that Yoji isn't suited for teaching. He finds it all too much of a hassle and hates dealing with people. Kuu laughs, agreeing that Yoji can be like that. He recalls that just the other day Yoji mentioned how anything beyond merely existing is a pain. Still, Kei is sure Yoji is taking the best steps to help grow stronger, especially given that they believe Ryu is targeting him. This in Kei's mind means Yoji must trust her to help him. She decides it's time to start Kei's training. She pulls back a blanket to reveal a stone, laughing as she introduces it as Lil Saku, Ri, or spirit stone they'll use for training. She asks Sieru if he thinks it's cute, revealing its full name is Sakuma. Kuu thinks her idea of cute is bizarre, but keeps that to himself. She then nonchalant mentions that the stone weighs 200 kilos, leaving Kao stunned. He incredulously asks if it really weighs so much, explaining that the most he's ever been able to deadlift was 70 kilos. She tells him to try summoning Shurshur. Kao realizes that summoning Shurshur should help him lift the heavy stone. He tries, but despite putting in great effort, he can't move it at all. Out of breath, he watches as Shurshur suddenly vanishes. Surprised, Kei asks why Shurshur disappeared. She explains that if Koro gets too focused on lifting the stone, he'll his connection to Shurshur. Curiously, Kei asks if having Shurshur around doesn't automatically make him stronger. She clarifies that while summoning a Shiryu does enhance his physical Abilities. The goal is to increase the output of those abilities. She advises him to imagine circulating Shur power from his heart to his fingertips. She also informs him that once he's able to lift the 200-kilo stone, they'll move on to more advanced necromancy training. He realizes that she is even tougher than Yoji. In some ways she's well-meaning, but a bit of a hard idiot. From that day Karu starts going to the gym, working on his deadlift. To measure his strength he manages to lift 100 kilos, and with Shur summoned he's able to lift an additional 30 kilos on the second day. When Koro tries to lift the spirit stone again, he notices her holding a math book. Understanding that finals are coming up, despite his efforts he still can't lift the stone. At night he trains with Shur. By practicing handstands his grandma Yo enters the room, complimenting him on how hard he's working and offering him some monery. He reflects that Midori is cutting into her own study time to help him train, and he decides he can't afford to slack off during his jogs. He resolves that if Shishi's output isn't enough he'll build up his physical strength to compensate throughout the week. He continues trying to lift the stone, training hard every day, but he still can't move it on the 7th day. While attempting to lift the stone again, he suddenly collapses from exhaustion. Midori, armed, rushes to the side, asking if he's been training outside their after-school sessions. She feels his forehead and notes that he's burning up, estimating his temperature at about 39 degrees Celsius. Scolding him gently, she reminds him that she warned him not to push himself too hard. She explains that this type of training drains both his mental and physical energy, placing a far greater toll on him than he might realize. Nonetheless, she acknowledges that it's impressive he pushed himself to the point of fainting, noting that he must have been relying on sheer mental strength to push his body past its limits. She praises his mentality, telling him that this drive to push beyond physical limitations is crucial for his growth, though he must be careful. Suddenly Midori stops, noticing a change in the wind. Using her heightened senses she detects Ario nearby. Karu, confused, admits he can't sense anything at all. Midori quickly identifies the presence of a demon Shiryo near the hillside, and immediately calls out her own Shiryos from her ring. Sensing surprise, she reassures him, saying not to worry, they will protect him. It reveals that she has 5 bird-shaped Shiryo under her command, and points out that the demon Shiryo attacking them is wild. She asks Karu if he can stand, concerned for him as he's suffering from a nearly 40 degrees Celsius fever. Though out of breath, Karu insists that he'll be fine, determined not to let exhaustion keep him down. Midori, noticing the demon Shiro's strange behavior, asks if Karu thinks it's being unusual, usually aggressive. She suggests they move somewhere less populated to avoid involving anyone else. He agrees, realizing the seriousness of the situation. To his surprise, Sakuma, the 200 kg spirit stone, gestures to be picked up. Midori effortlessly lifts the stone, reassuring Kaoru that she'll carry him along with them. Kaoru is shocked, marveling at her strength lifting the stone with such ease. She asks if he can run. Kei confirms that he can, but wonders aloud as she plans to run while carrying the stone. Just as they're about to move, the demon Shiryo attacks, but Midori Shiryo intercepts, shielding them. Surprised, Kei thanks the bird for protecting him. The Shiryo responds that no thanks are necessary. Kei begins to realize the demon Shiryo's range is longer than expected, making it dangerous if the attacks continue. Midori's for Shiryos form a protective circle around them. One suggests that they can't just focus on defense, while another proposes keeping the demon in check. A third Shiryo volunteers to engage the demon, while the fourth asks Midori who she plans to send. Unfazed, she leads it up to them, saying that whoever wants to go can go. Encouraged by her words, 2 of the Shiryo eagerly rush off to attack, while the other 2 stay back to guard C and Midori. She thanks them for their efforts. As they run, C asks one of the remaining Shiryo if he is not interested in joining the fight. The Shiryo named Tashin casually replies that he's not in the mood today. Koro finds this strange, marveling at how even a Shiro can have such moods. Another Shiro, Matsu, teases Tezen, claiming he just wants to stay by Midori's side. Irritated, Tezen tells Mutsu to keep his insolent remarks to himself. Midori steps in, calming them down and suggesting they head to the overpass where they won't attract attention. MSU comments that no one's around and they won't stand out while Midori reflects on the moment, saying it feels nostalgic. She briefly mentions how Mr. Itsuki once protected her, leading Ru in silent confusion. Mutsu adds that the excitement is spreading to the others. Meanwhile, in the attacking position, one of Midori, Shiro, addresses another as Dioro, telling him that he'll make the first move. Dioro acknowledges the order as the demon strikes. Midori signals with a flick of her finger, instructing her Shiryo to dodge. The Shiryo evades the attack with a graceful turn, revealing a necromancy technique Midori calls necromancy dancing. She then points her finger straight ahead and commands Stacco, causing the chief Shiro to create multiple clones that pierce the demon with their beaks. Following up with another command, Fort Midori clenches her fist as Deo pierces through the demon and seizes its soul. Watching this unfold, Crow is amazed. He realizes that Midori's Shiryo work as a coordinated team to hunt other Shiryo under her command from a distance. Midori smiles, calling the scene cute. Ku, astonished by their strength, reflects on how skilled she is despite being a year younger than him. He sits back, feeling his fatigue wash over him now that the immediate danger has passed, and calls himself pathetic for feeling so worn out. Midori, noticing his condition, praises him for being able to stand and run despite his training drain both his physical and mental strength. She advises him to rest, warning that if he doesn't he won't be able to move. Dioro returns with the demon's soul in his mouth and asks whose turn it is to consume it. The chief Shiryo responds, signaling that they completed the task. However, she senses that something is wrong. She notes that the sound of the Shiryo hasn't stopped and realizes someone is still watching them from a distance. Meanwhile, at the agency office, Yoji is in conversation with a fellow necromancer, Terashima, who remarks that it's rare for her to visit. Tara explains that she's just returned from hunting Ishiro for a job and that there's something she wants him to examine. She reveals a demon soul and asks if the mark on it isn't R's handprint. Yoji, surprised, takes a closer look. Terera admits she's never seen anything like it before, but has heard the stories and thought it was worth investigating. She asks if he knows what it means. He explains that once a soul is seized by Ryu, his palm print becomes engraved on it. This smart boosts the soul's abilities, but at the same time it causes the Shiro's mind to fall under Ryu's control. Terry remarks that the Shiryo she fought was unusually aggressive for a weakling, prompting him to ask if this means trouble. Yoji, now deeply concerned, reveals that R was already on the move. Back by the riverside, the demon soul in Deo's mouth also bears Ri's handprint, a clear sign of the growing threat.